when people, hear the word matriarchy, they just think it's a bunch of women-hating men.
Just as a Christ, just as a Buddha, just as a Krishna. That's who they were. And when you research your history, or as you learn it and discover it, it is important that you think like that. These women, these goddesses that the Western feminists call them, were our mothers. They were divine queens, not second to anyone, who ruled the world. They could call down the gods. They could raise the dead. They could prophesy, both orally and in writing. This is who they were. But because the history after the invasions, particularly by the Greeks, and then the Persians, and then the Turks, and then the Assyrians, and then the Romans, and on and on and on, they commissioned that those images be remade over into their own. And then they buried the history of these matriarchs under Greek mythology. And what they couldn't bury, they wiped out. Now, I asked you, how many black women really focus on Greek mythology? The way it's taught in school is boring. I think you're learning about Europeans, but that's not their history. That's yours. And it's not mythology. It was real. They could actually manifest spirit in that manner. So as you're researching your history, understand it has nothing to do with feminism. It has to do with finding your mothers. They belong to these ethnic groups, African ethnic groups, that existed all throughout East Africa, and now many of them were forced across the Sudan into where present-day West Africa. That's the preference I want to leave you as I begin to talk about. Okay?
Great. You said so much. You just said so much, because in listening to you, Mother, I am thinking about my own journey, and that's exactly how I came into it. I was, fortunate enough, because I came in through it the white way. I was fortunate enough to just, because I had time, I wasn't working, I was working for myself, so I was fortunate enough to really dig in it and study it and put these Greek goddesses with who they're supposed to be and who they are as black women. And when I saw a bunch of stuff just didn't come together, it was amazing, Mother, because then your book came to me, and I was like, I was just, the bells were really going off, because I knew that those myths were, I just knew it. I can't explain it. I just knew that those myths were real, that those women were real women. But what I wanted to say is, as I started to tell other people this, black, white, no matter, when I started to tell them, I was attacked from all different ways. I was attacked by the white women. I was attacked by black women, who have problems with paganism. And I was attacked by black men, because they took my strength and the knowledge of me and me being excited and talking about this stuff as I was either siding with the feminists, or that, no, God is not a supreme feminine force. You're New Age or pagan. So it's amazing when I hear you talk about that, having read your book, because I was attacked in all three areas.
And you will be, because it will take a minute, particularly for the diaspora, to recognize that. It's interesting with our black men, because it's a dilemma for them, because they have been so beaten down and dehumanized, and still are, all of us. that they're searching for not only their masculinity, but their divine masculinity, their preeminence, and through ancient history, which is there. And as men purveying the world, those that travel and see Africa and just see the world, and see a patriarchal world. And as such, it never occurred to them that they were not nurtured under that yoke. It never occurred to them as men. So you have this conflict while they're trying to affirm themselves as men and find their place in history. They're not at a place where they can even question the legitimacy of patriarchy for them.
Right, because some of them, mother, just believes that this is always the way it was, or matriarchy didn't exist,
Right.
And especially just like you said in those books, in the African-centered books, our story is not there. Our story is not there. And I wanted to ask you this because you just spoke about it. You said that there were things going on in, Kemet, Egypt, on the continent of Africa. You especially notified this in the book. You were saying that the matriarchs have a different version of her story. And you spoke of the priest of Amun and some other stuff that they did with the temples of the matriarchs. But I think that's also another disconnect, like you said, because I'm seeing a resistance in dealing with what happened on the African continent and those African shores prior to any colonization. There's a resistance, and they don't want to deal with, we weren't always honky-dory, and black men did attack the mother matriarch. And that's, some of the Amazon story, but I don't know, there's resistance there that they don't want to go into it.
Let's start at a point in history. Let's go to 3100 BC in Egypt. Now, when I was in school, we didn't have African studies, but many of you have. And they will give you a sanitized account of Egypt. It's still very Eurocentric, but nonetheless, and keep in mind that this is okay for Western writers to write this way because they supported patriarchy. They too had a deep resentment and envy towards the divine sacerdotal power that the matriarchs wielded around the world. And so it was in their interest to rid Africa and history of her presence. So this strange collusion that took place during this period is also something, too, we need to talk about. But let me get back to 3100 BC. This was what they recount is the period in which the pharaoh Menes joined the upper and lower kingdoms of Egypt. And they hailed this period as one of the greatest times or eras of Egypt's pharaonic history. What they don't go into is, was it that easy? He just joined the North and the South. Who was in the North and who was in the South, and why did it need to be joined? When we examine that, in a nutshell, what we have is that you had the matriarchs and their sacerdotal rule through the temples of Isis. Now, keep in mind, when I say matriarchs, I don't mean all women. All of the world knew who the mother god was. And so you had the men and the women that gave homage to the mother. She is the one who anointed the divine kings. He could not claim divine legitimacy unless he had her blood, her divine blood. That's how you claim divine legitimacy. And it was through her anointing of him, that he became king. In the north, you had the temple of Osiris, but really what you had was the thunder deity, the fire, the thunder, and it was these temple priests that were in the north. Now, something happened during that period where temples in the south were usurped by the priests of Amun, the thunder, which caused a great dispersion of these matriarchs and their temples.